Hello, everybody. It's Sunday night, about quarter till 6. It's the day before Labor Day. I haven't been on here in a week or so. A lot of things happening in my life. If you've been following me on Facebook, you know that Marion is moving to the Toledo area. So we've been busy trying to check the area out for her to find a place to live up there. But I wanted to get back on Wayne's World of Wine. Tonight it's going to be a very short podcast, but it hopefully will be the first of many on this same genre or venue. I want to do a very short podcast on the wines and wineries of Louisiana. I would like to do eventually at some point a lot of different states. And so I just thought I would start with Louisiana as one of the first ones to do this podcast on. I've done a little bit of research, but I'm going to have to use notes because there's no way I'm going to remember all of this stuff. All right. Wine and winemaking and wine divinification and wineries in the state of Louisiana. And by the way, I lived in Louisiana on two separate occasions. Both times was in the greater New Orleans area. First time I lived on the West Bank in a city called Gretna. And then later I'd moved to New Orleans East. And then I came back, I guess it was about 4 years later, something like that. And I bought a house, or had a house built in the eastern suburb of Slidell. And I lived there for 6 years. And eventually I moved away. And I always lived in fear of floods in Louisiana. And wasn't too many years after I left that Katrina came in and inundated my house. All right, let's talk about wine areas of Louisiana. First of all, let's look at the climate. We all know Louisiana is warm, it's hot, it's humid, it's sultry. What a lot of people don't realize is that in the wintertime, even as far south as New Orleans, which is probably, I'm guessing, 40, 50 miles north of the actual Gulf up the Mississippi River, if you go due east, you can hit the Gulf in about 30 miles. But New Orleans is not right on the Gulf, though a lot of people think that it really is. It's up the Mississippi River, 40, 50 miles, somewhere in that neighborhood. So Louisiana, and by the way, Louisiana gets cold in wintertime. It gets below freezing. And I remember the last winter I was there, I moved away in summer of '89. So the winter of '88, or maybe even January of '89, I lived in Slidell, and we would get snow once every, I guess the average was once every 8 to 10 years they'd get a dusting. We had 4 inches of snow one night in Slidell. We're all outside having snowball fights, 4 inches of snow in Slidell, Louisiana is incredible. All right, I'm getting off a topic here. The climate in Louisiana is what we call humid subtropical. Humid, as you would expect, humid. Subtropical, yeah, it's very hot, sultry, humid, damp, wet. It's a lot of bugs, a lot of snakes, a lot of gators. But if you love that area, and by the way, I do love the area. It's quite a unique area. The climate of Louisiana, again, is humid, subtropical, and Wikipedia shows that it has 51,800 and, pardon me, reading my notes, 51,885 square miles. Now, I did not double check to see if that was viticulture regions, wine regions, or if that's the whole state of Louisiana. Given the size of the state, I would think that that's probably square miles of maybe grapes under cultivation. So what are the grapes? Well, you're not going to get the large number of red varietals that you get further north. You get in Napa or even the Southern Appalachians or the Midwest or upstate New York, you're not going to get that. You're going to get tropical grapes, grapes that have a good capacity to survive with warm weather, grapes that will not survive in cold weather. Grapes would not survive down there probably. So what are the grapes? Louisiana is famous for their Blanc de Bois. Blanc de Bois is the term blanc, of course, as you already know, means a white wine, or it means white. So Blanc de Bois is a white hybrid varietal. Muscadine, everybody knows Muscadine. Muscadine makes that white wine that's sweet that millions and millions and upon millions of people enjoy. I don't particularly care for Muscadine. Muscadine's a little too sweet for me. Interestingly enough, I was talking to a friend of mine this evening, and she, of course, is having a Muscadine wine. So, talking about the Louisiana wineries on this podcast, Muscadine is probably one of the more popular of the Louisiana grapes. So, other grapes that are famous in the Louisiana area are Niagara. This one kind of surprised me. Niagara is a cold weather grape that was developed as a hybrid for upstate New York for their cold winters. I suspect that this might be a hybrid variety of Niagara that will do well in the hot, humid, subtropical climates of Louisiana. I'm going to, and later on the podcast on Louisiana wineries and so forth, I'll probably mention a few wineries and their locations. My guess is that the Niagara is probably in the northern part of the state of Louisiana versus, say, down in the New Orleans area along the I-10 corridor over to Port Arthur in that region. Norton. Now, Norton is a red grape, but Norton is not one of your natural European grapes. It's also a cultivated hybrid that was developed in the United States. It has a unique taste. It's pretty popular nationwide, actually. Norton is a good blending grape, I've found. I found that if you blend Norton with Cabernet Sauvignon or Cabernet Franc, that Norton is a good blending wine to give it color and to give it body. The other white grape that's famous in Louisiana is Viognier. Viognier is probably my second most favorite white wine. Viognier is a dry wine, Viognier wine's dry. Viognier is a dry white grape that makes dry wine. It's very good. I was a little surprised to see that it grows in the Louisiana area. When I put my vineyard here on my property in 29 years ago, and someday I'll tell you the story about my winery, I put 5 Viognier vines in, and I paid a lot of money for each one of the vines, and they did wonderful. And 4 years later, I did my first bottling of my wines from my 70 vine vineyard that I had put in. I ended up with about 6 bottles of Viognier. It was fantastic. I still have 1 bottle left, even though it was in 1998, so I'm sure the wine is no longer any good, but I saved it more for memories than anything else. So your grapes from the Louisiana area of wine is Blanc de Bois, Muscadine, Niagara, Norton, and Viognier. All right, so let me give you a list of maybe the top 4 or 5 wineries. I think I had read somewhere that Louisiana has 60-some wineries. That would not surprise me. All states now, all 50 states in the United States, has at least one vineyard. There are literally thousands upon thousands of vineyards in the United States. So I'm just going to mention the top 4 or 5 or 6 actually in Louisiana. So if you happen to be down in that area and you're touring and you want to do a wine tour and you want to stay away from the New Orleans touristy area, even though one of the vineyards is in the New Orleans, greater New Orleans area. But it's actually number one on the list. And it's called NOLA, which, by the way, for you folks that aren't familiar, NOLA, N-O-L-A, is an abbreviation for New Orleans, Louisiana. NOLA tropical wines. I hardly think that there's any grapevines growing in the New Orleans area. I truly don't think that that's going to happen. But you can have a winery and you can source your grapes from someplace else and have your grapes brought in, and you can either make them on your site, or you can actually do the vinification, aging, the whole 9 yards off-site, and bring them in and sell them at your facility and call it a vineyard. So one of the vineyards that I'm going to talk about, there is one in New Orleans. I don't know what street it's on, to be honest with you. I didn't look it up. But it's called New Orleans Tropical Wines. So it's somewhere in the greater New Orleans area. It could even be on the West Bank. I'm not sure. Perhaps I have a couple of friends who live in the New Orleans area. David and Cindy Bartolo live on the West Bank. Perhaps they could comment on this podcast later on and let me know where NOLA Tropical Wines are. Another one is Landry Vineyards. Landry Vineyards is in the northern part of the state at West Monroe, Louisiana. Landry, by the way, is one of the classic, original New Orleans family names. If your name is Landry, if you've ever been to New Orleans, if your name is Landry, people are going to say, oh, you're from New Orleans, your last name is Landry, or you're from Louisiana. Landry is kind of like Boudreaux. Boudreaux is another common New Orleans name, or Louisiana name. So Landry Vineyards is from West Monroe, Louisiana. So, and I believe, my geography of Louisiana is not the greatest, I believe that West Monroe, Louisiana is probably in the northern part of the state. Another one is called On Cloud Wine. It's definitely in the northern part of the state. It's in the large city of Shreveport, Louisiana. Had I had more time, I would have looked up each of these individual vineyards and told you or imparted to you what their grape of choice is for making their wines. But I'm sure that if you look up any of these vineyards on Facebook or somewhere on Wikipedia or something, or Google, you would be able to find the vineyard or find the winery and know what they specialize in. By the way, the red wine that I'm sipping on tonight is a Cabernet Franc. It's a California Cabernet Franc. I haven't done a whole lot of wine tastings lately. I hope to get back to that at some point. Then there's the Pontchartrain Vineyards. When I saw Pontchartrain Vineyards, my first thought was, well, gotta be right around Lake Pontchartrain. I lived in Slidell, worked in New Orleans, down in the lower Ninth Ward. I crossed Lake Pontchartrain twice a day, 5 days a week on the twin spans. Now, there's two ways to cross Lake Pontchartrain. If you go due east out of New Orleans on I-10, you have the twin spans, which is two bridges that go side by side. One's east, one's west. And I'm guessing they're about 5 miles long. And it goes from the swamplands of far New Orleans east over to St. Tammany Parish or the Slidell region. The other way to cross the lake is north out of Metairie, maybe? I'm not sure. And it's the Causeway, and it goes across to, I want to say Mandeville. Somebody can check on that and correct me. It's like a 24 or 26 mile bridge across Lake Pontchartrain. So when I saw this Pontchartrain Vineyards, my first thought was, it's got to be on the north shore of Lake Pontchartrain somewhere where it's a little bit sandier, a little bit higher elevation. So I looked it up and I said it's in Bush, Louisiana. Well, I didn't know where Bush, Louisiana was. So I had to Google on Google Maps where Bush, Louisiana was, or is, I should say. And it's actually probably no more than 30 miles from where I lived in Slidell, Bush, Louisiana. Oh, I see David just posted on here when I was talking about Pontchartrain Vineyards. He said Bush, Louisiana, which would lead me to believe perhaps David and Cindy may have already been to Bush Vineyards, or Pontchartrain Vineyards in Bush, Louisiana. So, and by the way, Cindy just confirmed the Causeway Bridge does go to Mandeville, which I appreciate that. So, by the way, Cindy and David live in the New Orleans area, so anything I say on here, I would most 100% appreciate you commenting and tell me if I'm right or if I'm wrong. You got to remember now, I moved away from New Orleans in 1989 when I left Slidell to move north when I was still on active duty in the Coast Guard. The next winery is Dubois Winery. Dubois Winery's in Gonzales. I have heard of Gonzales. I didn't look Gonzales up. I don't know where Gonzales is. If I had to make an educated guess without looking, I would say that it's probably west of New Orleans over toward Port Arthur, maybe halfway between Port Arthur, or maybe between Baton Rouge and Port Arthur, somewhere along the I-10 corridor. I don't know. So maybe somebody can look up where, also, by the way, Cindy just posted that there's a Wild Bush Farm and Vineyard in Bush also. So that would be probably separate from the Pontchartrain Vineyards. David says 20 minutes from Baton Rouge, so I'm assuming he's talking about Dubois and the Dubois Winery. I appreciate that type of information. The last one I wanted to talk about, and again, there was a lot of them on there, but I didn't want to just keep rambling on, because if somebody is going down to Louisiana, if there's 40, 50, 60 wineries, they're not going to hit 40, 50, 60 wineries. So I'm trying to pick wineries in different areas of the state so that if you want to visit the beautiful state of Louisiana, you can hit a variety of wineries. The last one I wanted to mention is a place called Millivec Family Vineyards. It's in Abita Springs. Abita Springs, again, is on the north shore of Lake Pontchartrain. It's up near north of Mandeville. Abita Springs is famous for its beer. There's an Abita Springs beer. By the way, I want to say, what's her name? Britney Spears, the teeny bopper from the teeny bopper years. I believe she's from Abita Springs, if I'm not mistaken. I may be wrong about that. But Abita Springs has always been famous for its Abita Springs beer. And obviously it has Millivec Family Vineyards. I didn't really read about it, but the pictures of the wines, they had them on a shelf, kind of astounded me. I glanced at them and I said, oh my God, those are French Bordeaux wines, just because of the style of the label. Well, I read the label, I blew up the picture up a little bit, and they are actually Millivec Family Vineyard wines. And one said white wine, one said red wine. So I don't know what the varietals are. All right, folks. Well, I'm going to get off of here, but I'm hoping this is the first of many different state thumbnail sketches of wineries that I can do a podcast on. If you have a particular state that you would like for me to do a tiny bit of research, I don't have a lot of time, as you'll probably already know, but I would be more than happy to do a little podcast on various states. I would only want to do one state per podcast. I want to dedicate it, I'm moving my phone here just a little bit. I would only do one state per podcast, and I don't want to do them very long. I have found that most of these podcasts that last 10 to 15 minutes are pretty much the primary or the best time frame. And of course, like all of my podcasts that I do here on Facebook, I will download this and move this over to my YouTube channel, which is also Wayne's Wines, or Wayne's World of Wines, or Wayne's Wine, or something like that. It used to be, when I first set up the YouTube channel, I called it Wayne's World of Wine. But the problem is that if you did a search on Wayne's World, you're going to get Wayne's World, Wayne's World, Wayne's World. You're going to get that hokey movie from 20 or 30 years ago that is all that's going to show up. So I kind of got away from Wayne's World of Wine. So I'm not even sure what my YouTube channel is called. Well, listen, thank you very much. And I have to tell you, Cindy just posted Wild Bush Farm and Vineyards in Bush is now Pontchartrain Vineyard. Well, that's interesting to know. So good information for us. Appreciate that, Cindy. All righty. So I'm going to get off of here. And again, if you would like for me to do a little bit of a thumbnail sketch on a winery of your state, I would be more than happy to do that. All you have to do is let me know. If you have any questions, let me know about that too. And again, if you have a subject about a podcast that if it pertains to wine, of course, that you'd like for me to do, let me know about that. At some point, I think I may try to do a more in-depth podcast on maybe some of the microclimates of wine in the United States as a whole. Another thing that I'm thinking about doing is a podcast on upstate New York wines. I've drank a lot of upstate New York wines, and I personally feel that upstate New York wines are better than many of the California wines. The same goes for Virginia wines. You get in the mountains of Virginia through the I-64 corridor between Richmond and I-81, and there are hundreds of vineyards there, and their wines are fantastic also. So in any event, thank you all very much for tuning in. Cindy's comment was, I didn't realize we had so many vineyards and wineries in our area. You most certainly do have a lot of them. And I'm not even doing justice, Cindy, by mentioning only 5 or 6 of them. I want to say I read somewhere on my comments that there's like 50 or 60, maybe 66 different wineries. I just don't have time to list every one. So I tried to do a whole kind of encompassing of the state from north, south, east, and west so that people visiting can see some of the various wineries that Louisiana has to offer. Well, listen, thank you very much, and I will see you again, and please give me some feedback. Tell me states you'd like to hear about. Tell me wine themes that you would like to hear about, and I will research those when I get time and do a wine tasting. I do next year in 2025, I think I'm going to try to do more winery visits. I did maybe 4 or 5 this year. All of them had to do when I was camping in Virginia, Kentucky, places like that. Ohio has a lot of wineries. I'm not real impressed with Ohio wines. They're mostly sweet wines or fruit wines. But I may do some Ohio wineries also. So in any event, I will let you go, and I'm sorry I keep rambling on here, but I enjoy chatting with everyone. I will talk to you later, and I'll see you then. You all take care now. Bye.